Welcome to World War III. Today, we're plunging into what feels like a truly pivotal moment, a significant shift in how military aid is actually being channeled to Ukraine. Our sources are revealing a new, pretty complex financial and logistical arrangement among the international allies. And look, this isn't just about, the quantity of weapons. It's really about a fundamental change in the flow of power, of resources. It signals a tense and certainly a new chapter. So our mission today is to unpack this new dynamic, understand the who, what, and why behind this evolving strategy, and, well, what it truly signals for the conflict.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate the gravity here. For years, the model for military aid, it's often felt reactive, hasn't it? Kind of piecemeal, subject to all sorts of political headwinds back in the donor countries. What we seem to be witnessing now is more of a deliberate strategic realignment, an attempt to stabilize, maybe formalize that process. Understanding these new mechanisms, it's not just about keeping up with headlines. It's really crucial if you want to grasp the broader geopolitical picture, how alliances are being sort of reforged under intense pressure.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with the big announcement that really kicked this all off. The U.S. State Department recently announced a package, now formally approved by Congress, for Ukraine. And this isn't small potatoes. We're talking 3,500 extended-range cruise missiles, plus the GPS navigation kits to go with them. A really substantial commitment, totaling, $825 million. But it's how this package is being funded that really caught our attention, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the fascinating part. The funding mechanism for this particular package is particularly noteworthy, unlike previous times where the U.S. was often the primary, the direct financier. This entire package, it's paid for by Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway. Now, the Pentagon is providing the crucial logistical support, the coordination, sure, but the financial burden, that's demonstrably shifted. This marks a truly significant departure from the older aid models we've seen.
That is a profound shift. Who carries the financial load? The sources clearly indicate, as you say, the core of this new arrangement involves European allies buying made-in-USA weapons, which are then supplied directly to Ukraine. And this stands in stark contrast to the previous Biden administration model, where the U.S. directly provided billions in armaments, often straight from its own stockpiles, right? Pulling from existing inventories. This isn't just a money transaction, it feels like a strategic pivot. Our sources also mention, interestingly, a role for former President Trump in brokering this deal with NATO allies. But beyond just who pays and who produces, what does this really signal about future leadership roles within NATO itself? Is it truly collaborative strengthening or maybe a subtle shift in influence?
That is a critical question. And well, it's probably a bit of both, isn't it? On one hand, yes, it absolutely strengthens the idea of shared responsibility. That's a core NATO principle. European nations are stepping up financially, showing a more tangible commitment. But on the other hand, it also kind of solidifies the U.S.'s role as the primary arsenal for the alliance. Washington still seems to be dictating the catalog, the production timelines. So while it might reduce the U.S. domestic political heat over the cost, it doesn't really diminish Washington's strategic influence over what gets supplied and when. It's a complex dance of power, I think, not just handing over the bill.
Okay, before we dive deeper into what this new arrangement truly means for the conflict itself and for global alliances, if you're finding this deep dive insightful, maybe take just a moment to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our future explorations. And actually, we're genuinely curious. Why do you tune in to our deep dives? What keeps you coming back for these, deep explorations into complex topics? Let us know in the comments.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this new model, it offers several strategic advantages, particularly for Washington. Domestically, as we touched on, it significantly reduces that U.S. political exposure, especially among groups like, say, the MAGA community, who've often voiced concerns about the U.S. footing the bill without direct payment from allies. This structure makes aid for Ukraine potentially more palatable across a broader political spectrum in the U.S., but it's not just politics. This also gives a substantial boost to the American defense industry. We're talking jobs, stimulated production, enhancing its global competitive edge. And crucially, it seems to increase cohesion within the Atlantic Alliance overall. You have Europe taking a more direct role in funding, while Washington coordinates production, the catalog, delivery, timing. It's a more distributed effort, perhaps, but still very highly coordinated from D.C.
Those are definitely clear advantages for Washington. But I wonder, does this model, while maybe appeasing certain domestic factions, does it risk creating a precedent where future aid is always contingent on direct payment from allies? Could that potentially limit U.S. flexibility in, say, urgent, unforeseen situations where immediate, maybe unilateral action might be needed?
That's a very real concern. It's one of the inherent trade-offs, I suppose. While this current agreement offers stability, a strict adherence to this exact model could indeed introduce a new layer of bureaucracy, maybe political negotiation, in future crises. It could be seen, perhaps, as the U.S. trying to offload financial responsibility. That might potentially strain relationships down the line if allies feel pressured to pay for something they might otherwise support differently. It's a really delicate balance, isn't it, between burden sharing and maintaining that strategic agility.
Right. And looking at the actual hardware in this first package, the long-range missiles, while they're undoubtedly important for Ukraine, the sources suggest the real game changer here isn't necessarily a single weapon system. It's the system of sustained support itself. The true significance seems to lie in what this signals, a clear runway, if you will, for a continuous, more predictable flow of modern equipment. It seems designed specifically to reduce that volatility, the uncertainty that often plagued previous aid packages. It's about consistency, not just one big delivery.
Exactly. And what's especially impactful here is the tactical synergy. These particular cruise missiles, they are explicitly compatible with the F-16 fighter jets that Ukraine is already using or is in the process of receiving. That compatibility, it significantly accelerates their deployment, their integration into actual combat operations. Furthermore, the sustained supply of long-range munitions, it provides crucial support for Ukraine's ongoing campaign. Those deep attacks against critical Russian military targets, we're talking bases, supply depots, and importantly, that essential infrastructure like the oil refineries that are literally fueling the Russian war machine.
And it's crucial to understand this isn't happening in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
This new model emerges against a pretty sobering backdrop. We've seen stalled diplomatic efforts, former President Trump attempting, largely without success, to mediate peace deals, first with Putin in Alaska, then later with Zelensky and European leaders in Washington. Those efforts have faltered. And in parallel, Moscow has intensified attacks, like the recent, just horrifying bombing of Kyiv that tragically killed over 20 civilians, including, I believe, 4 children. How do these failures at the negotiating table influence the necessity of a more robust, stable aid mechanism like the one we're seeing emerge?
Well, I think that diplomatic stagnation is precisely why this new model has gained traction. It's a direct consequence. When political solutions are proving elusive and the conflict is clearly escalating, the focus inevitably shifts. It shifts to ensuring Ukraine has the means to defend itself over the long haul. The previous sort of ad hoc nature of aid created uncertainty, and that's something Moscow could potentially exploit. This new, more formalized financial and industrial pipeline feels like a direct response, a realization that this war probably isn't ending with a quick negotiation. Ukraine needs a predictable supply chain to maintain its defense, almost regardless of the shifting political winds in Washington or Brussels. It's really a sober acknowledgement of those diplomatic dead ends, I think.
And beyond that initial $825 million package, we're seeing further significant European commitments. It suggests pretty broad buy-in to this concept. The Netherlands, for instance, pledged an additional $500 million just for an initial batch of American equipment and munitions. And then Denmark, Norway, and Sweden collectively announced another $500 million for U.S.-made war material. It really does paint a picture of a growing coordinated effort across Northern Europe especially.
And what's strategically interesting there, if you look closer, these countries, they are precisely the ones most committed to delivering F-16 fighters to Ukraine. So that makes the missile compatibility we talked about and the synchronized delivery of funds and weapons even more impactful. It's geared towards immediate combat readiness. It's not just about getting the equipment eventually. It's about getting the right equipment to work seamlessly together quickly in an integrated system. That level of coordination is something, frankly, we haven't consistently seen before in this conflict.
And just from a practical angle, this pooled approach to purchasing, it must have some serious advantages, right? Diluting costs across multiple governments, using a shared armaments ecosystem that leads to economies of scale, surely, and maybe greater agility and maintenance down the road. It feels like a multinational bulk order for essentials, streamlining the whole process, making it more efficient, more sustainable.
Absolutely. Economies of scale, simplified logistics, standardized training potentially.
Yeah.
It all adds up.
And it's also worth pointing out, it's not just European allies writing checks here. Ukraine itself is also directly purchasing from the U.S. It shows their own investment in their defense capability. For instance, back in July, sources say they allocated $322 million for Bradley armored vehicle parts. Vital stuff. And then more recently, in August, over $200 million for M777 howitzer support and various logistical services. So while European financing is key to this new model, Kyiv is also a direct player in this evolving defense market.
And speaking of critical systems, Germany has also pledged 2 more Patriot systems to Ukraine. That's a significant boost to their air defense capabilities against Russian aerial attacks. Those systems are invaluable.
Right, and the German Patriot deal, that introduces a particularly, well, clever element into this whole strategy, doesn't it? There's this reciprocal arrangement, apparently brokered, again, with former President Trump's involvement. In exchange for Germany donating their existing Patriot systems to Ukraine now, they gain priority to purchase new, updated Patriot systems from the U.S., which is a huge advantage for Berlin, letting them bypass what's typically a 2-year waiting list for systems that cost roughly $1 billion each. It's quite a shrewd incentive. It benefits both Germany and, crucially, gets critical defense systems to Ukraine much faster than traditional procurement would allow.
It's a very interesting mechanism. So while this curious and intelligent strategy allows Ukraine to receive critical air defense almost immediately, it's still important to acknowledge the timelines. There are still logistical hurdles, integration challenges, training requirements. Weapons don't just plug and play instantly. However, the good news here is that both the Patriot systems and these new long-range missiles are largely familiar systems to Ukrainian forces, especially since they've now been operating F-16s for, over a year. That familiarity significantly helps accelerate deployment and operational readiness, less of a steep learning curve.
So pulling it all together, what does this all mean? What's the moral of the story here? For Washington, it seems clear. This model eases internal political pressure while boosting the U.S. defense industrial base, a kind of diplomatic win, appeasing both supporters and maybe some critics of Ukraine aid. For Europe and NATO, it elevates their direct role, shortens delivery times by tapping into established American manufacturing. That's a big benefit for their own posture and cohesion, too. And for Kyiv, crucially, this new arrangement creates a much more predictable, stable flow of vital military assets. F-16 support, Patriot defenses, assets that are absolutely vital right now, especially with diplomacy seemingly stalled.
That sums it up pretty well.
But looking beyond the immediate benefits, are there potential long-term ripples? Unintended consequences we should maybe be thinking about? Does it, for instance, risk creating a sort of two-tiered system within NATO? Or maybe does it exacerbate global defense supply chain issues for other allies who aren't part of this specific deal?
Those are definitely valid concerns to raise. One potential ripple effect is exactly that. While it streamlines aid to Ukraine, it could indeed strain the global supply of certain advanced defense systems for other U.S. allies. They might find themselves facing even longer waiting lists for their own procurement needs now. There's also the ongoing question of strategic autonomy for Europe. While European nations are funding these purchases, they remain heavily reliant on the U.S. industrial base. This model actually reinforces rather than diminishes that reliance, and that might be a point of contention for some European leaders advocating for greater independent defense capabilities down the road. So yes, it's a pragmatic solution for an immediate pressing crisis, but the long-term implications for the global defense architecture, those are still very much evolving.
So in essence, the core arrangement, it's almost elegantly simple on the surface. Europeans finance. Americans produce and supply. Ukrainians operate.
That's the paradigm.
And as you said earlier, this arrangement doesn't profoundly alter the overall scenario of the war, maybe, but it significantly adjusts the route. It makes the flow of defensive means to Kyiv much more stable, more consistent.
Exactly. It's about sustaining the fight with a more reliable engine, perhaps. Not necessarily changing the destination overnight, but ensuring they have the fuel to keep going.
And ultimately, like so many aspects of conflict, it really boils down to time, scale, and money, doesn't it? The greater the synchronization between that European financing and American defense manufacturing, well, the faster this combat power can actually materialize for Ukraine. And they need it with, frankly, increasingly extreme urgency. This model aims to accelerate that. But that race against time, it remains absolutely constant. We've really delved into a significant shift here in global defense and aid, illuminating some of the complexities behind the headlines. If you're still with us, thank you for being a part of the deep dive. Please take just a moment to reinforce our community. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'd truly love to hear from you. Where are you watching this from today? Let us know your city or country, or tell us what was the single most striking detail or insight for you in this deep dive. We do read the comments. And if you want to continue exploring this unfolding global landscape, get further World War III insights, make sure to click on the image appearing in the top right corner of your screen right now. There's more exclusive content waiting for you there.
And maybe just a final thought to leave you with. As you consider this new model, this distributed responsibility, ponder how this approach, spreading financing, production, operation across multiple actors, How might that reshape not just future international alliances, but maybe the very economics of conflict in the long run? Could this become a blueprint for collective security moving forward? Or is it more of a temporary workaround, maybe one with unforeseen consequences yet to emerge?
A powerful thought indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We look forward to having you with us on the next one.